Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is the legislative update brought to you every month by the Williamson Inc., our county chamber of commerce. And we're very glad to have a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed audience here at Columbia State this morning, and appreciate the folks that are watching us on Channel 3 WCTV, as well as listening to us on WAKM. Our guest this morning is Rogers Anderson, Williamson County Mayor, and long-time mayor, I would like to point out. How long, Rogers, now have you been mayor here in Williamson County?
Well, good morning. I actually started in 2002.
So we're 17 years. And how much longer is this term that you're in now?
So all the county offices have to run in 2022.
Okay, so you got a couple more years before you have to decide whether you're going to make another 4-year run. Silence is golden. So we appreciate all you're doing for the county. Obviously, 17 years of success and no opposition the last time you ran, and we would expect that probably would be the case again if you decide to do it again.
Well, thank you.
The State of the County Address, July 24th. Once a year, you give the State of the County Address to the Chamber Luncheon Group at Capacity Crowd this year. And so what I'd like to do today is kind of hit the high spots with you on the things that you talked about in that State of the County Address. Overall, I guess there's no way to characterize what's going on in Williamson County as anything but good, with maybe the exception of traffic, which is kind of my little deal. But really, there's so many good things going on, and you covered all of those. But let's start talking about the budget, the 2019-2020 budget was passed late June, I guess, or early July, and had to do a slight increase. Hadn't done one of those in a long time, though. Is that right?
That is correct. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to Columbia State for always hosting us. Do a great job, and to the other elected officials and city managers and aldermen and that are here. Thanks for being here. You're right, Dave. This year's budget did facilitate or needed a property tax increase, and the county commission saw fit to go along with that. There was some discussion in the early days of it being about 11 pennies, and on the week before that, we got some additional information from the state that we would be receiving an additional $4 million, which a penny equals about $1 million. And so we were able to reduce that budget increase from 11 pennies to 7 pennies. So the new effective rate is $2.22 per 100. I have to look out to Nina. Nina Graham's our budget director here, and she's here covering my bases. If it's good, I'll take the responsibility. If you don't like
it. If he says something inaccurate, if you would just raise your hand and we'll correct him.
Nina does an outstanding job for us in the county. And I would like to say that if you look at Brentwood, you look at Franklin, both of those are AAA, Moody's AAA rated counties. And that's important to us that we maintain that. We've had that going on 10 years. And as much money as we borrow from projects that we need, and 75% of them are in the area of public education for school buildings, you need to have the best rate that you can possibly have. The world you live in, they call them credit scores, and the world we live in, they're called credit ratings, and all of us have those. If you go to buy a car or a house, then how you are rated out based to pay your mortgage off or pay the bills back. And it's no different from city and the county, but it takes an effort to maintain that, and it takes an effort to look at that and then look out into the future and be sure you protect and preserve that.
AAA rating is kind of like having an 800 credit score. Is that
It's been a long time since I had a personal rating on me, but I understand that's pretty. Is that pretty good? One of you?
I think it is.
Do you have that, Dave?
Last time I checked, the we just bought a new car, but so it might have gone down a little bit. But the looks like as usual, school expenses, operating expenses, debt service is a large part of the county budget. So this year, I think in your address you said 73% of the county taxes go to school operating and debt service, which is pretty much administered by the school board, not the county commission. And so that leaves you with 27% of the taxes to oversee. But there's a lot of things that go into that 27%, and we'll talk about a few of those. Back to the schools just a minute, though. School building program is alive and well. In your address, you highlighted Thompson Station Elementary, Creekside Elementary, the additions at Page High School, Jordan Elementary. Couple of things that weren't in your presentation, and you might have mentioned it, but the Brentwood High and Middle School STEM building, that is in use now this year, isn't it?
That is correct. And that's 6 months old. Anything beyond 6 months, we don't talk about it because there's something else. I'm being facetious, but no. So let's give a shout out to one of the reasons that we're able to get a handle on our capital costs. Capital costs are the bricks and the mortars for the most part. And about 3 years ago, we, the county commission, asked the school board at that time to give us an overview of what they were going to need over the next 10 to 15 years based on population growth. Many of the people here in the audience know that our population is pretty close to going to double in 2040 to 2045. That's 20 to 25 years away. And so trying to forecast out any greater than 10 years is almost an impossible task when you're growing like that, from the infrastructure to the school buildings. But the school board presented us with a building program, both enlarging schools. You mentioned a couple, Page Middle. Adding on to the existing schools saves you money rather than having to build a whole new school. Now, that takes school board action for them sometimes to enlarge the population base of the kids that go there. But that building program came back around $500 million, so $500 million over that period of time. And so then the job became, how are we going to pay for that? What does that look like when you go to borrow money? And so working with our consultants and Bassberry and Sam Stevens, Nina, they kind of developed a model that we had not used before of using different items. One of those items that came out early on was a facility tax or school impact tax, whatever you want to call it. It was going to the cities, and Brentwood stepped up under their leadership and returned about $2 million to 2.4. Kirk wants me to get that 0.4 in. Yes, I understand. And so the hat goes off to them because they put the gauntlet down and they said, we want to help those schools and we want to help all of the building program, not just in Williamson County. And the majority of that money went to, you mentioned the STEMS program in Brentwood Middle and Brentwood High, the improvements that you do. That was part of the program. And high school cost, new school cost, not land cost, around $60 million, and middle school 35 to 40, elementary school 25 to 30, and so you put those in your model. And Nina and many of us met with the county commissioners, and we we created this model that these are the tools we could use in our toolkit to help pay for these things without absolutely always having to raise that property tax. One of the other things we did, and it's not been done in our county, and I don't know many other counties across the state, through the through Matt Largen and the economic development team and our city partners, we actually went to each one of them and said we'd like to raise the sales tax. And the sales tax at that time was 9.25. The local share is 2.25. So let's explain the way that works. So before I get too deep into this, so let's assume that the tax is 10%, just for easy math here. And you buy an item and you got $1 tax. Well, 7 cents of that, 70 cents of that goes to the state, and the other 30 cents of it's divided from where the local jurisdiction is generated, Brentwood, Franklin, Nolensville, Spring, any of those, and the other half goes to schools. So the county commission is responsible, Nina's responsible, I'm responsible from the executive side to pay the mortgages, to pay the bills. Schools don't do that. So when we asked the people, would you go along with it? 66% of the people said yes, if it was dedicated to public education, and that's exactly what it did. And then each of the cities signed off to forgive for 3 years their portion of that. Now, all total to all of 6 of our cities is about $60 million. That would be put into play to help pay for public education, along with property taxes and along with all the other things. So it was one of those tools, but it could not have been accomplished without the cooperation of our cities, whether it's Franklin, Brentwood, any of the cities. They all participated.
It's not 60 million a year, but 60 million over the 5-year planning period.
Well, I wish it was 5. If you could talk Kurt and the city to go to 5, that'd be great. But it's 3. Their boards voted on it, and it was 60. It's $60 million all total. Now, the lion's share of that is coming from Franklin. Wherever the sales tax is generated, the mall does that, and Franklin is first, Brentwood is second, and Spring Hill and Nolensville and all the other cities. The exception to that rule is to show you the way that our partners, our city partners, help and are concerned about public education. Fairview, which was already at the maximum, you can't go beyond 9.75. And then their city manager contacted Nina and said, look, we want to participate in this, but we're already at the max. Well, let's figure another way to do it, to do that same amount, so that I could have, we could have 100% buy-in, and I wouldn't have one city saying, well, this one's already done it. So they gave up for 3 years the increase. Now, on the flip side of that, let's be big boys and girls in this room. After 3 years, Kurt and Eric and all the city managers across, they're able to receive that portion of it without having to fight the battles of having a sales tax increase, which is always difficult for elected officials when it's not for schools.
So back up to the 30,000-foot level here so I can understand this. Over 3 years, you're getting an additional $50 million from the city's portion of that sales tax.
60.
60.
Don't take 10 away.
Sorry about that. And if I understand it right, then that means there's another 60 of the county's portion that's coming in as a result of that tax increase.
You're correct in saying there's another portion, but that goes to public education directly. It does not come through the county commission coffers.
So it can't be used for the building program.
So we went to the city, we went to the schools and said, would you give your portion up too? And they agreed, they voted and said yes. And so we have the full sum of that money going towards capital cost, and that's all we can spend it for.
Okay, so I'm trying to piece this together in my head, but Dr. Looney, when he was school superintendent, used the $500 million figure as what we needed over the next 10 years to fund the construction of new school facilities. So we've got $120 million of it there. You've also did an education impact fee. The county commission.
Now, wait a minute. You said I don't.
Keep
We got city. Well, I'm going to keep you honest. 60 million is coming from the cities. The schools, they don't have 60 million in it. They've got about what, 10? Yeah.
in the 60s. So we only got 60 out of the sales tax increase.
That's correct.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to keep it all straight. In addition to that, we passed an education impact fee of about $10,000 per home, which the home builders were excited about. And so how does that work? How does the education impact fee?
So there were several building steps that we approached on how we were going to pay for building programs. One of them was the gift from Brentwood. One of them was the reallocation and the increase of the sales tax. There were other things that we did, moving monies around within the taxing structure that we had. And then one of the pieces that you talked about was an educational impact fee. It varies on the square footage, the amount that you would receive, each individual, but you pay it at permit. The bigger the home, the more you pay. The smaller the home, you don't pay as much. I would like to say we had lots of public meetings. We delayed it for 6 months, and then when we finally put it in, we put it at 50 cents on the dollar to allow things to get out of the pipeline. We're trying to be fair to everyone. The home builders did not approve of this particular method. They would much rather see a broad-based tax spread across in terms of increase your property tax, give the cost to everyone rather than on new construction. But we were convinced that the people that were impacting our public education were the new folks, not the existing folks that were here.
If you didn't have new folks moving in, you wouldn't need more schools.
Theoretically, that's correct. There are some that move up in a house, but the majority of the growth that we're seeing is new growth. And so we put this tax, and it passed 23-1, I believe, the night of the vote, and put it in place. And within months after that, there was a lawsuit. We won the first round at the local level. It's in the appellate. I talked to legal counsel yesterday, and they're making arguments now. So it's in appellate. Hopefully by spring of next year, we'll get a final ruling, unless it goes on up to state Supreme Court. We've got about there's an appeals process you have to go through and all that. But grand total, we've got about what, Nina, $38 million sitting in the bank that is going to be able to be used at some time. We're not spending that money anytime something's a litigation like that. Lawyers, we feel good about it, but you certainly don't want to spend money that you may have to pay back. So it's sitting there. But I do want to emphasize early what I said. School buildings cost 60, 35, and 25 million. That's to pay the debt. We'll reduce some things. We'll pay some internal capital costs, but the majority of that money raised over this next 3 to 5 years is to pay the debt service on these school buildings. And that's really what we have to do. We've committed to doing that, and I don't know what's going to happen after 6 to 8 years. That's about as far as I can forecast some kind of funding model to help pay for schools.
Okay. Well, but incrementally, we're getting there, and the school programs seem to be moving forward about as fast as we need them to right now.
Well, I think the latest number that I heard for this year, we've got over 1,000 new kids coming in. I think 1,048 is what we ran some projection numbers on, and they're already looking at that number. Of course, you don't get those all on the first day of school. You don't get them the day after Labor Day. You actually get them throughout the course of the year. But many of our schools, we've already had ribbon cutting. Scales Elementary had a ribbon cutting to add in addition here just a couple of weeks ago. We've got the Innovation Center at the old Yates Center there on Franklin High School.
Tell us what that's all about.
Well, there's probably one of the more creative things the school board voted on was to create an innovation center that would train and teach our young people in the area of entrepreneurship, how to run a business. You have a private business. I did that for 28 years. Those first 3 to 5 years are the most critical times for a particular business. You look across our county, and we're made up of all of us working in different places, from the lady that's fixing your hair to the barber shop, all the way down to the person that's trying to create a restaurant. But that first 2 or 3 years is critical, and so we're teaching our children how to run a business. We're also getting into some of the creative things that entrepreneurs like to do. Just recently, I know which is near and dear to your heart is in the ag side, near and dear to my heart. We were able to secure through the University of Tennessee agriculture side and through a grant of about $50 million to teach children how to do a 3D cutout of a car and do it through solar. And that grant can only be done through the educational. So you go to places like Brentwood, their STEMS building. That's the kind of things, if you haven't been there, it's kind of creative to go see what the kids are learning today.
Now, you just let $50 million just kind of roll off your tongue. Now, where is the $50 million coming from, and where's it going?
State of Tennessee, and it has to go through for educational funding to be able to teach the next generation of children on this.
That's coming to Williamson County?
It's already here.
Okay, good. And that's for these types of initiatives.
That money did not happen to go through schools. That goes through the University of Tennessee Agriculture. That's through our STEMS programs. And so there's pockets of money you're using. The creative side, I was at a meeting late last night just in healthcare and the things that we're doing in healthcare. A friend that I know very well, you know him well, had a hip replacement day before yesterday. They did it at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. 3 o'clock they had him up. 6 o'clock he was walking around. He went home. It's amazing. They go into the internal side of the leg as opposed to cutting that fatty tissue on the outside. And it's that kind of creativity that we're seeing this particular one was done by a local doctor that went to school at BTA, and we all know him. And he's come home. He's working at Bone and Joint, and they can do a couple of those hip replacements and get you back on and get some quality of life. And some of us that need body parts.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention this, but I had my shoulder scoped a week ago Wednesday, and I'm almost as good as new. And
I'm glad you didn't look in the mirror. Sorry, Dave.
I get to ask the questions, though. So. Oh, boy. Rogers and I have been around a lot of things together here, so we'll.
So I need to,
well.
Yeah, and Dave's hard. I mean, he does a great job with his company, but his heart's in the ag side. And when you go down Lewisburg Pike, you can see evidence of his cattle. He's a city farmer. I'm not even that anymore, but it's a great it's a great profession. And part of the Innovative Center, I think, will be dealing with the ag side. We're not going to create a lot of big-time farmers anymore with the price of land around here. You can be a big-time landowner real quick in this community. But I think it's important that we train and teach and prepare our students for that next walk of life and whatever their chosen profession has to be. And I'm excited about what the innovation, the STEMS program up in Brentwood and our other schools are doing. And thanks to the school board and the county commission for funding it.
Moving on along, we've halfway through our time today. One thing that also got mentioned in the budget process was a tax relief program for seniors. And maybe all the seniors know about it, I don't know, but tell us how that works, just in a nutshell.
Well, without getting that is administered through Karen Parris's office, to the trustee, where you really write the checks, or your mortgage company sends the checks. And that program has been around for several years. There's about 3 different parts of that. You've got tax relief for the elderly, you've got basic state tax relief, and then you've got a Williamson County, I call it, enhanced program. And if you fall into that age bracket of seniors, and it's income based, and it's to help out our community all over with the relief of some of their taxes, but it is a process you have to go through, and it has to be filed, has to be legitimized. And so if people are listening, get a hold of Karen's office, go up to the trustee's office, make an appointment. You will need to bring some documentation in about your earnings and et cetera like that.
So bottom line is, if you're older, you got limited income, and your property taxes are a problem, go see Karen.
That is correct, but again, it is in. They do have some programs. We're one of the few counties that stretch that about as far. And there's no free lunch. Let's be big boys again and have this conversation. Everyone has to pay their property taxes. State law requires that. So if there's some kind of tax relief, then we, as tax-paying people, we have to make that up. It's about $1 million program a year, if I remember correctly. That's a penny on the tax rate. That's the least we can do for our seniors that need that help.
Are you old enough to participate?
I'm very old. I'm old enough for it, just like you are, Dave.
One of the other areas of the county government that is really important, we found out in 2010 how important it can be, but is the emergency communications and law enforcement, emergency services of all types. And you've got a new facility for the communications system that was completed 2 years ago. How? About 3. Time flies, okay. And you announced a new partnership with the city of Spring Hill. How are we doing?
So let's go back in history. Let's give a little history lesson here. For many years, you had districts that took over the 911, that did 911 for your respective district. Brentwood has the ability to do that. Franklin, Spring Hill, and then Williamson County kind of took all the other. And so when we built the center, we put some modeling in there for what does the future look like? What does 5 years, what does 10 years look like? Because that's a $25 million structure, the cost of one elementary, and that structure is a hardened structure. It's designed to take a F5. Is that the highest tornado rating? I think that's right. And it's all the glass in it. It's a safe place for our emergency people to administer down off of Beasley Drive. It's a secure area. When we designed the building, it was also to be used for training of our law enforcement. Now, because it's heavy laced with the latest technology, the ability to look throughout our area, to look throughout the state, and look for bad weather situations, law enforcement. But when we started building that building, there was no such thing as an organized SRO, Student Resource Office program. And that's the men and women that go into our schools every day. And the county commission, the cities, and law enforcement community all sat down and said, after Sandy Hook, and said, we've got to have that. We put these men and women in there. Now it's a third of Dusty Rhodes' budget. It's 72 people, And 5 years ago, we didn't have an organized department, so they had to go somewhere. The sheriff has no more room, and so we laced them inside that public safety building to monitor our schools and to let the cameras be their eyes, so we can look at every room, we can look at every operation going in, and we greatly enhanced all of our schools for security reasons. The public safety building was designed that out of a bad flaw in 2010 when the floods were coming in. We had sandbags and a lot of us out in the back of the old administrative complex trying to keep the water out. The 911 centers, like Brentwood and Franklin and Spring Hill, we all just had to live through that experience. But at that time, Sheriff Long and I looked at each other and said, we can certainly do better than this. It took a couple of years to organize that and get it going. And so now that structure is down there. The 911 center that you talked about with Spring Hill is now rolled in along with Franklin. And we can dispatch and get things done there. And we communicate greatly with Brentwood.
So for a regular guy like me, if you call 911 in Spring Hill now, it's routed through the county facility.
Well, that's true. If you picked up your phone right now and called, it's going to ping itself on the nearest tower, and that tower is going to send you somewhere. That's kind of the way it works. And there was a period of time when we had our cell phones, we couldn't, you know, if you were out on your farm and you twisted your ankle or hurt your shoulder, we couldn't pinpoint you exactly. Today's technology, we can do it. And we put in programs now without getting into all the acronyms, but you know, when an alarm goes off at your house now, instead of it going to the alarm station, being rerouted back, that was in the speech, instead of it going to the alarm station and coming back to be dispatched from wherever, it just goes directly into our center now, and we chip off a good couple of minutes. And that may make the difference in a heart attack victim, may make the difference in a child that needs some emergency attention so we can get that first aid. That's the good part about technology. It's expensive, but you can find ways to save time, which is oftentimes going to save a life.
And Williamson County is one of the, I think, few counties in the state that has a countywide volunteer fire organization like we do.
So every city and county across the state and across the nation is ISO rated. That's Insurance Service Office. Some of the larger insurance companies do it geographically by zip code, the 9 zip code. And so when you go to purchase homeowners insurance, depending on where you live and how close the fire station is and where the fire hydrant is and how many men and women that work in that determines a rating 1 through 10, and then you have an unprotected home. And so the higher you get up on the pecking order, the more your premiums cost. Franklin has a fire rating of 1. You can't get any better than that. What's Brentwood? You're 2. So those are pretty reasonable rates to pay for these homes. You get out into the rural areas, that's a different story. And so we were finding it very difficult in all of the fire services in the unincorporated part of our county are run by volunteers, men and women. And we have half a dozen different groups that oversee the fire protection for these communities. But as our community was aging, those men and women that, like you and I, we may still have the desire to be able to do that, but we weren't as flexible as we needed to be putting out, and it was getting harder to recruit young people to come back in. So we started a volunteer. We gave Bill Jorgensen the charge. He put it through our fire services, and just the other night I spoke at graduation, and we were up over 300. I forget the exact number in a 2-year window. So there are young people and middle-aged people that want to give back to their community. So we're providing that training, we're providing that equipment, and ultimately what you'll see is those homeowner rates go down in the community. In fact, our flat Flat Creek, College Grove, Paytonsville community. As soon as the rating comes back, they will go from a class 9, 10 to a class 5, and they'll see about a 35 to 40% reduction in their homeowner's premium. Now, who gets the credit for that is the fire guys and girls. Ultimately, though, the county commission has to do that funding. Same thing, the Achilles heel for government, county government, is the schools. That's not a bad Achilles heel. That's where most of your money goes. The Achilles heel for cities is public safety, their fire and their law enforcement community. And they're very high-ticket items because you're doing that 24/7. We don't have to do that in unincorporated. We rely on those volunteers.
Yeah, my apologies to Judge Sharon Guffey for my notes. I kind of got them disorganized here. But I do want to circle back to the criminal justice system a bit. And I know there's a lot of plans going on in the juvenile area to make improvements to the way we handle the juveniles that come through our system.
So if our population, and I'm going to stand up and walk to Judge Guffey and let her talk about that a little bit. So if you look at our program and our community grows, unfortunately, not all of our children are perfect angels.
Are any of them?
So she's already, I'll get her going when I say that. But we have issues in the juvenile side just like we do in the criminal side. Judge Guffey, several years back, was charged with being the juvenile judge for Williamson County. We can do better than what she has to work on in the environments, not only for the employees, but for our patrons, which in this case would be the parents and the kids that come through that system. And at 27 cents that you're talking about, it doesn't go very far when you start building new building school. So you let me walk back here and let Judge Guffey kind of tell you about it. Well, I don't have anything to do with the judge.
You're just going to give it to me. Take it away. So currently, the juvenile court is located next to the jail. We're attached to the jail. And we're actually grandfathered in because you're not supposed to have juvenile systems with an adult system because they're different. We don't punish children. We're a rehabilitative body. So 20 years ago, the county did a study and they said, you don't have enough space. And that was 20 years ago. 20 years ago. So thankfully, to our mayor, he established a task force, now it's been like a couple years ago, to evaluate all of the criminal justice pieces for the county. And what they said again was, you know what, you need a new building. So here's why. We have in juvenile court not just the court system, we have a school. We have the alternative school that is part of under our roof, run by the schools. But when a child is expelled from school for zero tolerance for an alcohol charge, they come to the alternative school. And I can't tell you how many parents I've had say they drive up and they see razor wire and they go, where is my child going? Are they going to jail? And that's not what we're about. You know, we're about helping kids make better decisions because their brain's not developed. In addition to that, juvenile court, you shouldn't have given me a microphone. Juvenile court in Tennessee is a dual system. We don't just deal with delinquent children. We deal with all the children in foster care. And so we're dealing with babies and families. And we need the space and the atmosphere that's going to wrap our arms around them. And we can't do that physically in our location because we're working out of closets. But it's not conducive to taking care of our most vulnerable population.
So what do you need?
We need a new campus that's going to include everything that I just said. The court system, the clerk's office, the alternative school, and it's going to cost some money. But the good news is that it's just going to be one time. It's not like building 10 schools in the next 10 years.
I think she covered it, Mayor.
Well, she did a great job, and so we've had a consultant for the last 6 months, I guess, maybe a year. We've had a task force that made up of all the different elected officials that have to work in that arena, the court system and the juvenile side and the jail system. Ultimately, we're going to need this new center that she's referring to for our. We'll also need some improvements to our court system. And I'm talking in terms of space, which is going to require additional people. Sharon is not going to be able to run, the judge is not going to be able to run her programs with the existing people. She's going to need more. We're still a couple of years away from being able to satisfy that. And then ultimately, we're going to be needing a new jail. For you that have been around a while, we had a jail that was built 30 years ago, and it's just getting harder to find parts for our jail. And our population, as it grows, you need more area in which to incarcerate people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all component of growth.
Right. And we've got precious little time left, and about half of my agenda is still not covered. But so let's skip over a few things that are all very important. But appreciate the color on the juvenile system, because that's a huge commitment and a need that's clear. You're getting ready to build a new animal control center.
We are. We're a year away from that. We're closer to that than we are some of the other areas. Again, animal control is legislated by the state body that the counties and cities are to be able to handle the dogs and the cats and the other animals that are domesticated for the most part. We don't deal with raccoons and those types of things. But last year we had about 6,000. I'm looking at Nina, 6,000 animals that went through our animal center. And 96% of those we were able to find homes. That is administered through Andrea Johnson. And when you can have a 96% save rate, there's a lot of programs and a lot of volunteers working behind the scene in fostering animals. And so we need to have a modern, up-to-date, best practice animal center. We'll locate that in Franklin. The cities, for an example, they don't really run an animal center. We run that for them, and they contribute back to some of the cost overhead that goes into that. Same thing with the court system. If you're arrested in Brentwood or Franklin, for the most part, if you need jail incarceration, you're going to wind up over in the county system. Now, the metropolitan areas like Nashville, they'll have their own jail system, but there's still the workhouse, still the jail itself that people are incarcerated in.
Put in a plug for Andrea and her programs at the Animal Center. I think one of the smartest things that is being done is they provided free spaying and neutering for cats last month. And
I heard they were at your place.
Somebody dropped off a couple of kittens at our place, and we took them over and had them fixed because two's enough. But that means we won't have any baby kittens coming back to the animal center. But
well, I would like to say that the feline population, we've got programs. Some of them are controversial, but they're feral cat programs where there's cats in downtown Franklin and downtown Brentwood.
Yeah.
People just don't see them. They're very intelligent animals, and they're working at night to feed themselves and provide for their families. And so we have these colonies that we go in and we'll capture the female and or the male and spay or neuter that particular, and it's amazing how nature works, and particularly around agriculture, around the old barn. You may not know you've got one, but you've got a cat over there that's helping to control the mice population, and we have them. And Nashville's got, every city's got them.
Right. Well, that getting them spayed or neutered will help. We're going to jump around. There's several things I'd love to spend a lot of time on. Parks and Rec are doing a lot of new facilities, running a great program. You've got the Sports Authority working on ice rinks for hockey and
Well, I won't say what we're working on, but we're looking at, there's a market out there for our community, for all 6 of our cities in our unincorporated area, looking at amateur sports. A lot of us have had children that are involved in amateur sports. We travel, and for the most part, when they come to our towns, they're on taxpayer facilities. And so you take the soccer complex, a heavy rain like we'd have had last night. If it would have been a tournament, we would have had to terminate those tournaments. There are other ways to do that. The Sports Authority will be looking at those, and kind of in the same model that Nashville did a few years ago with the Predators and the Tides. Ice, sheets of ice is very important to our community, much like soccer was 25 years ago. But let's don't forget, you got things like lacrosse that all of our area school that we're putting in artificial turf now has soccer, football, and lacrosse. Lacrosse is a huge sport in our county, and soon to be sheets of ice or hockey.
Hockey's a very popular sport to a select group of folks, and would there be any possibility of having high school hockey teams that could possibly help the school system support that facility?
Well, that's a loaded question. The answer is yes. And somewhere 25 years down the road, as more people migrate into Williamson County, I don't know. ECD could tell me. I'm not sure what the latest growth numbers are coming in, but well over 50% of our growth is coming from other states, and a lot of those states have hockey, and they're interested in that. Hockey now is not a TSSAA sanctioned sport. It's just at the club level, and I'm not sure that lacrosse is beyond a club level. Somebody would give me a nod or yes or no, but eventually it'll be a TSSAA sport. Just like in the Olympics coming up next year, some of the new things they've added, skateboarding, trick skateboarding, and things like that. I mean, you and I grew up on one that we took the wheels off from the roller skates and made it, and today it's into Olympic sports.
The corporate relocations are going well. You've welcomed Issue Motors to Williamson.
We're so thankful for our corporate people that come to our community. Over 30 years I've been in the political arena as a county commissioner or as mayor, and it is about jobs. It's about public education, having the best that you can have, and then it's about jobs, good paying jobs, and that I've never wavered from that. Now that comes with traffic, and that comes with residential issues and zonings and annexations and all those things, but it is about good jobs. For our children and for our community to have those, you've got to have those high-paying jobs, and we are so blessed with corporate America being here in our county.
And speaking of traffic, a lot of road improvements going on in the county. Most of the big ones are being funded through TDOT, the 96, Highway 96 East going toward Murfreesboro is getting ready to start construction on a 5-lane road, I think, all the way to the county line. Is that right?
That is correct. Leaving Franklin right around Arnold Road, where the Highway 96 going towards Rutherford County, that the funding has been approved, and I would say in 6 years you'll see, 5 to 6 years, you'll see that road be a 5-lane road.
McHatcher is under construction on.
McHatcher is looking good from Hillsborough Road back over to Highway 96 and dead ends into West Haven. And then the new McHatcher from Columbia Avenue back over to Highway 96 away from the Tractor Supply store. That'll be widened. The leg that's not in, with this conversation about it is from
the 2-lane portion.
Yes. Just a widening.
Now, Columbia Avenue, I think, between Franklin and Spring Hill, there's going to be a lot.
Well, you've got City Alderman here that probably answer that, but that's on the drawing board too. Lots going on in Brentwood. Fairview's got a project out on Highway 100. Spring Hill has got the new interchange out around the old Alexander Farm. That will come over from Lewisburg Pike, a direct shot over to I-65, which is going to open up a whole new business community there at the old Alexander Farm.
That's also going to go over to Lewisburg Pike, I think.
And that is correct, all the way over. So that'll give some relief to Spring Hill instead of them having to come up Columbia Avenue or hit I-65. When that road is complete, it'll be a direct shot over. I think it had a meeting yesterday about some of those items, and from the Cool Springs Marriott down to the new interchange, it was 9-minute drive, driving the speed limit with no traffic. So that's going to greatly enhance our Spring Hill residents.
Nobody's talking about it, but that'll give all our Bethesda folks a direct access to I-65 as well.
It will help them. And you got to remember, I know there's county commissioners here in the office, in the audience, and there are many people here that are, how do we keep Williamson County rural also? That's an important piece of this element, that about 60% of our land is not developed, and I'm for not wanting to develop all of that. And so there's some real movement out there trying to work with the cities and counties about growth and zoning, and we're all going to have differences, but at the end of the day, we need to work to find those solutions.
Well, we could spend 2 or 3 more hours talking about this. We didn't even talk about the fair. Weather was a little challenging this year, but it looked like you had a good one anyway.
We did. It looks like revenue side, we don't have our expenses, but our second best fair.
Right. Want to leave a couple of minutes here for questions from our audience here. If you've got any, let me know. If not, I'm going to pick on Kirk Bednar from the city of Brentwood just a minute. And Kirk, we want to have you back for a session here soon. We're working on Congressman Art Green, and Patty is. We're hoping to have him here soon too. But you've got a construction project on Franklin Road that's well underway. What's the time frame on that?
I think we need to clarify that TDOT has a construction project on Franklin Road, not the city of Brentwood. That one is dragging a little bit, to be quite honest. We are, I guess, 2 years in, and we're probably still another 2 years from what we hear. A lot of utility issues out there, which anytime anybody who builds roads knows that's always a challenge. So we are keeping in close communication with TDOT, expressing our wishes to see that move along a little more, but we're at least 2 to 3 years before that's done.
The new mayor doing okay so far?
What do you think I'm going to say to that?
Your new boss?
He's doing wonderful. Trust me, he's doing great.
Thought I would throw you a softball there, but Patty Carroll, she is, what's your official title?
Field rep for Congressman Mark Green for Williamson County, but I go outside of Williamson County. But my favorite place is Williamson County.
Retired mayor of Fairview, and she is working with Congressman to try to help have him here for us one morning, and we hope to have an announcement on that fairly soon. Anything that the news media hadn't already told us about what's going on with the congressman?
You know, it's recess, and I think I heard him say the other day this wasn't much of a recess because they work the whole time. So he's been out in the district and busy. He's, trying to hit all the spots and fit in a vacation, which is hard to believe, but I think it's the first break I've seen him take. So, but things are going well. He's had a successful first year. We're, getting to the end of it, and had some great trips. I think y'all have heard him talk some about, and so he's just busy and loving it, loving serving the people.
Good deal. Appreciate you being here this morning. I wish we had time to talk to all the distinguished folks we've got here in the audience. We've got a couple of Franklin aldermen and probably, you said county commissioners, and I don't know all of them well. So if we could talk to you all, I'd love to. But Mayor, we appreciate you being here with us this morning. Anything else you would like to?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I look forward 2019 and 20 to be an interesting time. We're continue seeing growth. I think you'll see some major announcements in the next year that will bring more jobs here. I know they're working hard to secure some of these businesses, but I do want to leave you that when businesses come here, they don't get our school tax pennies, and that's just something we don't do. And that's so important. That may not make a lot of sense if you don't like numbers the way I do, but it makes a difference. We're not trying to make those dollars back up through property taxes when you're giving away to business. It's important to have businesses here and jobs that they create, but it's not to the detriment of our public school system.
And we appreciate the job you're doing. If anything this morning, I hope we have shared with a lot of folks how many things you're having to juggle financially, as well as just getting things, people to do the things that the county needs done. It's not just a one job, and hopefully now we can appreciate a little bit more all the things that are going on behind the scenes and how difficult that really is. I want to thank the folks that financially helped make this program possible: Vanderbilt University, Vanderbilt Health, and AT&T. I was going to pick on Dennis if he was here with AT&T and talk about cell phone service, but he's not with us this morning, but we'll get him. Have you got an announcement this morning from Middle Tennessee Electric? We'll circle back around on that. Thank you so much to Creed Henderson and his team from the WCTV, and for Tom Lawrence making this happen on WAKM. And Kel McDowell, thanks for bringing the coffee this morning. We our community coffee guys had a conflict, so Kel is the guy that got it here, and we appreciate that, Kel. Dr. Lampley from Columbia State, appreciate the use of this beautiful facility. Again, if you hadn't been to the Columbia State facility since it moved to Liberty Pike, you need to come over and check it out. It's an amazing thing. Thank you so much for being with us. Look forward to having you back next month. And we will, I've just got a heads up from Brandy Blanton. Well, we'll do that sometime, but thank you, Brandy. And we will see you back next month.